My name is Reverend Courtney Willis, and on behalf of Baptist Women in Ministry of North Carolina, I would like to invite you to join us during Holy Week for brief video devotions that we will post daily on Facebook. Every day from Saturday until Easter Sunday, you will find a devotion led by a Baptist woman in ministry right here in North Carolina. These women will share a variety of gifts in their own areas of ministry. You'll hear music, you'll experience prayers and devotions, and we might even play together. So I hope that you will plan on joining us each day for those brief devotions and plan to share them with those who might be encouraged as well. We look forward to spending this Holy Week with you.
In September of last year, my husband and I had the most devastating week of our lives. I was 12 weeks pregnant at the time, and we went to the doctor for a routine ultrasound, and we learned that our baby had some pretty significant health concerns. There were 3 major concerns, and I won't get into what those were, but because of those concerns, the doctor felt like our child would not survive much longer. It would probably only be a matter of days. So I took the week off of work, and for 7 days we waited. We were waiting on the death of a child that we had struggled to conceive, a child that had come after multiple fertility treatments, a child that we had so deeply longed for. The first few days, I felt like I was walking around in this thick, dark fog that just wouldn't lift. Like all the air had been sucked out of the room and I just couldn't even take a deep breath. The first part of the week, I sat around the house just paralyzed with shock, trying to remember to do basic things like showering and eating 3 times a day. And then I just couldn't sit in the ashes anymore. So I started to tackle a few home projects that I had on this long, ambitious quarantine list that I had made back in March. Now, approximately 2.5 of the 15 items had been completed, so I decided to just start keeping myself busy for the week. My husband went back to work, so my parents came over that day to help, and we went to Home Depot and bought these solar-powered string lights to hang across our backyard, a project that I've been wanting to do for 5 years. For the next few hours, we hung those string lights, and we laughed about how my type A father had to measure to get the exact distance between the ground and the roof and the columns. It had to be perfect. We held our breath as he climbed up on a ladder, and I held his legs against this wobbly metal frame. And my mom shouted from the sidelines, "A little to the left. No, that swag doesn't match the other swag. You got to lift up that right side a little bit more." Y'all, we really were a sight. But at the end of the day, we sat around that table and looked out onto my backyard, and suddenly our little postage stamp size space was just gleaming with new life. It's been 7 months, and those lights are still cascading across our backyard. And every time I see them, I'm reminded of that week, the week where we were waiting on a death, the week where our grief sat so heavy on our chest like a weighted blanket that we couldn't take off. Today, we remember the suffering that Jesus endured on that wooden, splintered cross. We remember the pain and the agony and the death that Jesus took on for our sake. We remember the grief that the disciples and his community must have felt as they waited and watched their teacher and friend die the most gruesome, horrible, unimaginable death. Today, we sit in that suffering. And honestly, friends, my gut reaction is just to move on too quickly. I know that Sunday's coming, and I'd just like to remember the story and move on to hope and new life and bright sunny mornings. But too many times we don't allow ourselves to sit in the darkness. It takes courage. It takes strength. And if you're anything like me, denying yourself pleasure and comfort is truly a discipline that has to be practiced. But I'm also reminded that it is not only possible, but it's common and normal to hold two emotions together at once. If you've ever sat in a funeral of someone that you deeply loved and listened to stories that made you laugh and triggered moments of joy, you have felt that powerful reality. It's confusing and it's sometimes a little disorienting to feel both grief and hope. Mary Oliver says, "We shake with joy, we shake with grief. What a time they have, these two housed as they are in the same body." Now, since we have these solar-powered lights in our backyard, they charge up with the sunlight every single day. So it takes the perfect balance of sunlight and the dark night sky for them to blink on. When I look at those lights, I do see the suffering that came the week of my miscarriage. But I also see tiny little glimmers of hope. I'm reminded of the fact that we were never once alone during that time. I'm reminded of the family and the friends that showed up in masks with tears streaming down their faces on our front porch with casseroles and flowers and wine, all during a global pandemic. I'm reminded of the Grubhub gift cards, the text messages that said, "I don't know what to say, but I'm so sorry and I love you." I'm reminded of every glimpse of hope that we had that week because we held on to those moments like our lives depended on it. If you are walking through a season of infertility, infant loss, or struggle, I know all too well the bleak feeling of isolation. Though it may feel this way, I'm here to tell you that the suffering does not last forever. The lights do blink on and the darkness dissipates like a cloud that floats by. I can't explain it, but it does happen. Friends, we carry the fullness of sorrow deep in our hearts from Good Friday. 2 Corinthians 4:7-11 says, "But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that the surpassing power of God belongs to God and not to us. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed, always carrying in the body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our bodies." We carry that death in our bodies. But deep in the human heart is this unquenchable trust that life does not end with death. Like a seed that's buried deep in order to bring forth life, we must wait for the new life to come. And while we wait in the dark, we are reminded that no tragedy, no mistake, no evil, no injustice, no oppression, no loss, no death, nothing is beyond the redemptive power of God's love. May we experience life in new places that we thought were dead. May we be people that have the courage to carry both grief and joy deep within our bones. Amen.